Welcome to Season 2 of the Crypto Pulse podcast, your ultimate guide to the world of crypto, Bitcoin, and world economics. We're here to guide you through the crypto universe with thought-provoking topics, in-depth knowledge, and information to help you make informed decisions. We'll also be interviewing some of the best minds in the industry, such as CEOs of crypto projects, traders, economists, authors, and development teams from around the globe. And now for the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Yield App, and daily compounding interest on your digital assets with its intuitive web platform and their newly launched mobile app, which is available for download on both iOS and Android. Plus, don't forget to refer your friends to earn extra rewards. Visit yield.app for more information. Hello and welcome back to the Crypto Pulse podcast for another one of our weekly ramblings about crypto and macroeconomics. There's certainly an awful lot to talk about this week. So Ben, how has your week been?
It's been all right, thanks. Yeah,
Good.
Happy that it's the start of a brand new month because today's the 1st of July and
Sure is.
June has officially been one of the worst months ever for crypto and specifically Bitcoin, the worst drawdown that's ever happened in a 30-day period.
Well, what a time to be alive.
Woohoo! Yeah, I think it was 40% down on the month, which is absolutely enormous. And we've obviously spoken about some of the macroeconomic bits on the show and why we think this might be happening. But I have my fingers crossed that we might be seeing potentially a green month in July. Who knows?
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? A nice big green candle for those that have been dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and other cryptos, of course. I mean, if you've just tuned into the show for the first time, and I know there'll be a few people that have because we picked up various new listeners from some of our recent guest interviews. At the moment, Ben and I have a very simple strategy, which is dollar cost averaging it into the market during the dips with very small amounts. We've got we're sort of very risk off and very conservative with what we're doing at the moment, because I don't think now's the time to put all of your money into the crypto market. But that's what we're doing, and we've, personally I've set some buy orders at around 18k for some Bitcoin, very small amounts. So that's what I'm looking at. Is there anything you wanted to add on that in terms of like the approach that we have or you have individually with regards to the market as a whole? Yes.
So I think firstly, dollar cost averaging is one of the most effective ways to enter into positions. Secondly, I think if you've got fiat or stable coins on the sideline, for me, what I'm looking to do is just thinking about how long we think this drawdown or this bear market is going to last. And I think we're probably looking at 18 months to 2 years. So for me, I'm looking at what I've got available. I'm sort of roughly dividing that up by the number of weeks that I'm expecting this thing to last, and going in with very, very small weekly purchases.
Right.
Because you want to be dollar cost averaging on the way down as well as on the way back up, just because we don't know where the bottom's going to be. And I think if you follow, some of the big accounts on Twitter, they're calling the bottom every other week. But I think fundamentally, Bitcoin's never been through a macro environment like this. We've still got the war ongoing with Russia. We've got out of control inflation globally. We've got quantitative tightening happening in the US. The Fed are unraveling their balance sheet. So I think all of these things absolutely indicate that we're in for a global recession. And of course, Bitcoin and crypto has never really seen anything quite like that. So it's certainly going to be a test of the market. I think my view is that we're probably going to lose some of the riskier end of the crypto space, and hopefully for it to never return. And I'm talking about things like high yield products. I'm talking about shit coins, copy and paste DAOs, really bad NFT projects, really anything that promise you riches overnight. I'm hoping that gets flushed during this cycle. And with the regulation that is coming, I think they hopefully build a really sensible framework around the ones that are, the blue chips and the real proper commodities. So
yeah. I mean, it has been a real flushing exercise for some of the crap that's been in the space over the last 18 months, 2 years, which is a good thing, because for this space to grow up and to attract people that aren't used to crypto and people that are in traditional markets, it needs to smarten up, and I think we're definitely going to see that. So yeah, we're still risk averse, but absolutely long-term bullish on Web3, on crypto, on decentralization, and of course on Bitcoin as well. And personally, I'm just going in for the big blue chips and Bitcoin. So we'll see how that pans out. And on that note, our favorite CEO has once again made another Bitcoin purchase through his business.
Oh, Michael Saylor. Yes, he has. And it's albeit a very small crypto purchase this week. So yes, Michael Saylor via MicroStrategy on Wednesday morning announced that he'd purchased 480 Bitcoins for $10 million. They paid an average price of $20,800. And bought these coins between May the 3rd and June the 28th. So that now brings their total company holdings up to about 129,699, which they've acquired for $3.98 billion and at an average cost of $30,600. So it was an incredibly small buy for Michael Saylor.
By their standards, yeah.
By their standards, absolutely. I think I read somewhere that it's the equivalent of dollar cost averaging about $25 into a $1,000 portfolio.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe he's doing the same thing as you. Maybe he's got a weekly pot that he's just going to buy into the market, or a monthly pot. So he's just going to do it a bit slower and bring that dollar cost average price down over maybe the next 12 to 18 months.
Maybe he is. That does feel like a lot of paperwork, though. I'm sure
he's got loads of staff to do paperwork. He's not like us that kind of we just have to juggle many things and do our own paperwork. He's got a whole admin crew there, right?
That's very true. And while some people have obviously mentioned that this is one of the smallest purchases that he's ever done, it actually speaks volumes. I think this is probably one of the most important that he's ever done, because at a time where people are talking about MicroStrategy's liquidation price, and they're talking about how they've used leverage to enter the market, and is Michael Saylor okay?
Are you okay, Mikey?
Are you all right? I think this sends a really strong message, which is that they're not going anywhere. They're still as committed as ever. They're still going to continue to raise funds to purchase Bitcoin, no matter the price.
Right.
And I think that creates, I think that just shows his stance. So yeah, he's clearly confident with his strategy, and as we always say, he will either be the most genius investor of all time, or a complete lunatic. Time will tell.
Time will certainly tell. So yeah, we told you a little bit about what we're doing. Of course, not financial advice. Do make your own decisions. We're just here to share what we're doing, and don't take financial advice from anybody apart from a professional and your own intuition. That includes Michael Saylor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've said before, he was the single biggest loser during the 2008 financial crash.
He lost, of course, yes.
He lost $6 billion in a single day, which is more than any private individual has ever lost. And I think that's probably been beaten now with some of the drawdowns on Tesla and Elon Musk and whatnot. But at the time, he held the record. So his hit rate is not great, but perhaps he's learned some valuable lessons. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm interested to see how this pans out nevertheless. So moving on to our first main topic of the week. And in fact, we've got a few topics to discuss around regulation, because there's been some news from America, from the SEC. Yeah. Last week, the Financial Times reported that the US SEC Chairman Gary Gensler has been communicating with his counterparts at the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, in order to promote security and transparency for investors who trade crypto assets. The SEC has historically focused on securities such as stocks, and the CFTC on derivatives. So two separate departments. Recent legislation introduced by Senators Cynthia Loomis, who's the Republican for Wyoming. Yeah, she's cool. And Kristen Gillibrand, a Democrat in New York, would classify digital assets primarily as commodities and grant additional regulatory powers to the CFTC, which is quite interesting. Gensler's recent move suggests he sees the writing on the wall and is preparing for the day when the SEC and CFTC will be working together more closely. It could also be viewed as an attempt to make sure the SEC retains an ample slice of the crypto pie. This strikes to me as two very large government organizations in the States trying to sort of jostle and work with each other, but not giving up too much power in decision making. And unfortunately, I think this is going to lead to way more bureaucracy and probably way more legislation than probably a lot of the crypto space wants to see.
Yeah, this is a really interesting problem. And I think this is the biggest one that the US has at the moment where regulation is concerned, is that they haven't been clear enough in how they are categorizing cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Now, obviously, Gary Gensler, as the SEC chairman, he's in charge of securities, the Security Exchange Commission. Now, there are absolutely unregulated securities in the crypto and blockchain space. You only have to go to any of these sort of arcade exchanges and you'll find that there are, companies touting securities as utility tokens. We know that, and that is absolutely Gary's bag. He should be looking at that with haste. However, we have got Bitcoin, a potentially a legitimate commodity, which Gary's reach doesn't really extend to. It's not something that the SEC covers, and that really is something that's looked at by the CFTC. So the fact that they're working together to try and muddle through some framework, it feels a little bit messy. I feel like nobody really is kind of saying categorically, this is what crypto is. This is, we had the Howey test years ago, didn't we? Where you'd sort of run something through the Howey test, you'd run a security through it or potential security, and you'd find out whether it had to be registered or whether it didn't. I think that you could very easily get these people around a table and come up with a modernized version of this specifically for digital assets to determine whether it's a commodity or whether it's a security. And I think from there you build the framework, because at the moment I feel like they're just sort of pissing into the wind.
I think their major concern, well, the SEC around like unlicensed securities, illegal securities, fair enough. And also things like CBDCs, but the crypto, we call it the crypto space, but it's just so broad and wide. You've got Web3 applications, you've got blockchain, you've got NFTs, NFT marketplaces, you've got DeFi, you've got decentralized apps, you've got cryptocurrencies, an alternative to government money, dollars and euros and pounds and stuff. Yeah. So there's so much in this space, and I think it's probably quite hard for some of these characters in these organizations to really get their head around that, and it's hard enough for us to do that sometimes. So for them to start to create a framework is, I think, going to be quite difficult. I mean, the general consensus seems to be at the minute that Bitcoin and probably Ethereum and some of the others aren't a security and they're going to be treated more as a commodity. But until they've got these definitions right and really understand the space fully, I think it's going to be very hard to have legislation that's going to be good for the everyday person. And what we really want to see ultimately, I think, and I don't think this is a US thing, I think this is a worldwide thing, is that we want to see things in place to stop the bad actors, to stop the scammers, and to lead people down a path where they're going to lose a lot of money. That should happen, and there needs to be some regulation around that. But too much regulation is going to stifle the space, and yes, I don't know where that balance should be struck in some ways. I want to say a big thank you to YieldUp for sponsoring this podcast. Now, we may be in the midst of a bear market, but that's no reason to stop earning on your digital assets. YieldUp allows you to earn daily compounding interest on the biggest digital assets at the click of a button. YieldUp is a licensed fintech company built by a team with a strong background in traditional finance. YieldUp offers instant asset conversions, fiat on-ramp, auto compounding, and security features such as activity log, transaction history, and more. Simply deposit your digital assets and click to start earning daily rewards. And you can earn up to 1,000 of their native token, YLD, by referring your friends to YieldUp. You will also automatically join their monthly referral competition for a chance to win massive prizes. Today, we have a special offer for our listeners. Go to yield.app/CryptoPulse and sign up for an account to enter a giveaway with a chance to win up to 3,000 YLD tokens.
My concern is that we get a similar situation to the sort of tech boom, which is technology companies innovate faster than regulation could be written. And we saw this in Web 2. We saw this with the rise of social media companies. We saw this with businesses like Google and Amazon. And actually, they moved so quickly that, they chose the direction they wanted to go in, and they moved so quickly that regulation couldn't keep up. Not only could it not keep up, but it couldn't foresee the issues that might be further down the line. Regulators now in the US and the Privacy Council have had to retrospectively write rules to govern these businesses. And that doesn't work either, because very often you find that the damage is already done. You only have to think about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and that massive data leak and how that data was used to sway American elections. Well, it's all very well trying to write some piece of regulatory framework after it's happened, but how do you protect society from all of the risks?
Well, you don't, and you don't. This is the case of like, we seem to be obsessed with safety and risk. It's like you have to have some risk in order to innovate and move forward. There is just no utopia here.
True.
And you have to allow some things to die and some damage to happen for the greater good. And I think we've seen that with, COVID's a perfect example of that, isn't it, really? Is that there was such a focus on, you can't make contact with another human being just in case, when in actual fact, the other side of the coin wasn't looked at in as much detail. Right. What are the unintended consequences of that? So we've got to be super careful with this. And the thing is, governments are so big now that you've got so many people that are trying to justify a job, and the more legislation they can push and the more meetings they can have and the more discussion points that they can have, the more they can justify taxing citizens to pay for all of that. And I don't want to sound like a complete anarchist, but governments have got too big in my eyes, and I think that they need to focus on the really important stuff and not try and solve every single risk.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I would say that I'm really pleased to see with regulation in the US is that this doesn't seem to be a partisan thing. We've got Cynthia Loomis, who's the Republican for Wyoming, and Kristen Gillibrand, who's the Dem for New York, both working together to classify digital assets. So that to me is a real positive. And I think that there was a narrative starting to form just last year around Bitcoin potentially being a Republican thing, but actually that seems to be that seems to have gone now, which is great, because as we spoke to our amazing guest yesterday on the show, yes. We now we really need to think about the humanitarian need for Bitcoin and how it's important in developing countries, but also just as the people's money. So this isn't a political left-right thing. This is actually just about giving people a tool which can be used irrespective of who or where you are. I honestly,
ultimately, Bitcoin doesn't really care what the regulations are, because the only thing that governments can really regulate is the on-ramps and off-ramps, which probably leads us on nicely to our next topic of today's show, which is with regards to what's going on in the EU.
Yes. So the EU are also looking to regulate the crypto Wild West. Now, we've kind of known this is coming, but the EU Parliament are to finally regulate what one of its lawmakers, Ernest Urtasun, termed as the crypto Wild West.
I'm laughing because in our notes, is that you or Cal that's actually put the hyphenation of the like how to pronounce that name? It's quite a hard one to pronounce.
That was me.
Sorry, I've put you off now, haven't I?
No, you haven't at all. So it's an anti-money laundering body is closer to formation following the agreement, and EU officials had also reached a provisional political agreement on the transfer of funds regulation, which will oblige crypto asset service providers, or CASPs, in the EU to collect data on transactions with unhosted wallets. So the TOFR rules apply to every transaction, no matter how small, including ATM withdrawals, and requires that the identities of an unhosted wallet's owner are verified on transactions above €1,000. So the rules will become effective in 18 months after the MiCA regulation is applied. And a part of the bill statement reads, the bill makes it mandatory that details of the sender of a crypto asset and the receiver are contained in the transaction details. Also, they must be displayed on either side of the transaction. When necessary, crypto asset service providers will be mandated to provide these transaction details to the appropriate authorities. Such necessary cases might include investigation of transactions suspected to be for money laundering or terrorist financing. Now, this is something we spoke about on the show. I think late last year. This was something which we saw coming. It's a really difficult one to police, in my opinion, because the whole point with anonymous transactions are that you can create a self-hosted wallet, and you can send Bitcoin, for example, to any wallet in the world, and there are some privacy features. I don't know how they're going to police that. I think the point that we made before is that perhaps they go down the route of targeting Apple and Android, and perhaps they say that for any wallet products that are hosted on their app stores, require some sort of KYC to be able to distribute through their network. I think that would be a really easy way for them to push forward with this piece of regulation. But there are literally thousands of wallet products available. There are some which are some available through even the Tor network, which of course is the dark web. So how the EU's reach extends into that space, I suppose for the sort of general consumer, it will probably be quite straightforward. But if you're a bit of a techie and you really understand what you're doing, I don't see how they're going to make this work.
I have no idea how they're going to make it work to the fullest extent, but I think what they're trying to do is firstly make it more difficult to make things private. So if you make things more difficult, the average person will just comply because it's easier and it's convenient.
Right.
And we live in an age where we give up privacy for convenience. So I think psychologically a lot of people are there. And then secondly, they can just make it illegal not to declare those transactions. And then there's a lot of people that will be afraid because they feel like they're doing something immoral or wrong. So I think that's probably the main way that they do that. But it's impossible to police this. The internet as a protocol is borderless and to a certain extent censorship resistant. And Bitcoin is too. There's absolutely no way a certain jurisdiction can enforce that across the board. They'll just make it more difficult. And you're right, the things like downloading apps on your iPhone or your Android, it'll be compulsory probably to put that information in there, which I think is a terrible idea.
Well, we've seen this before with Apple specifically. There was the major case with the game developer that developed Fortnite, and Apple wanted Fortnite to use its payment system, so it had to be done through Apple Pay. However, the Fortnite team said, well, this is the monopoly on payments, and we want we want users to use our in-app payment systems.
Right.
And it was this sort of wrestle between two giants. In that respect, Fortnite actually won the case, but it just goes to show that Apple do have enormous amounts of power. And if regulators go to them and say, look, you need to write into your terms now that any single wallet product that is distributed through your app store has got to contain KYC. Because for anyone that's worked in the app space, you'll know that you submit your app to the app store and it gets physically checked by an Apple employee before it's distributed. And it gets checked for a number of things. And if there's a specific thing that they require that you don't have, they'll just reject it. You know, you can't just publish. So I think that that's probably what we're going to see. That's my prediction, at least.
Yeah. So our recent guest, Anita Posh, made a comment about the thread posted by EU lawmaker. How do you say his name? Ernest Urtasun.
That's the one.
Saying, imagine being proud of mass surveillance. EU is the new China. Thank you. So, and also crypto market players like Coinbase have expressed their displeasure over this new EU crypto rule. Coinbase has argued that this bill will only encourage several low value crypto transactions. And that won't be favorable for the crypto market as a whole and general growth and the adoption rate. Well, I tell you what, it's days like today, I'm glad we're not part of the EU.
Yeah, it's a very small silver lining. I've actually been laughing at this.
Because it is a small silver lining, you're right.
It is. It's a funny one. So in the UK, we have a member of parliament called Jacob Rees-Mogg. And his current role is the Minister for Brexit Opportunities. So he goes out and seeks out the best possible benefits to the United Kingdom following our depart from the European Union. And so far, in his 12 months tenure in the position, he's come up with 2 major benefits. Do you want to hear what they are?
Yes, go on then. Tell me what they are.
Just because they're quite funny. Okay, so the first one is that previously we were inhibited from having full power hoovers. The EU prevented us from having hoovers over 2,000 watts. But now that we are untied from the EU, we can have hoovers up to 4,000 watts, which he says is a big win.
Great, because I'm sure he does his own hoovering.
I'm sure he does. Yeah. The second major win, which he announced last week, was that we don't have to change our charging cables because, of course, the EU have voted unanimously to push Apple to change the Lightning cable to USB-C. But the UK doesn't have to do that. So I'm hoping Apple will make special phones just for us.
Yeah, I mean, that is ridiculous. If that's the only 2 things that is found, I think the idea of the UK making its own decisions in economic and political decisions is a good thing. The problem is the people that are making those decisions and delivering that. That is like, you know, sometimes it's better the devil you know. But I have to say that some of the reach of the government now is just getting absolutely ridiculous, and I'm seriously concerned that governments are just going to have way too much power and are getting themselves involved in people's private business that they have no right to be involved in. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out with the EU, but it doesn't look good, and I think we need some pushback here because there's just, like, I do believe in things like private property rights and individual privacy, and go and listen to the interview we did with Anita Posh and find out some of the reasons why she thinks that we shouldn't be registering unhosted wallets and having full KYC. Yes. Because we could go into immense detail with that now, but I think, like, listening to that interview you haven't done already will cover off a lot of those points. And she's very passionate about the topic, so we love talking to her.
Yeah, she was a really wonderful guest doing some incredible work. Very grateful to have her come on and talk to us about what she's doing. But I feel like it's time maybe to move on to our final segment of the show today. What do you think?
I think it is. The weird world of crypto, you mean?
It is the weird world of crypto. Yeah, it is. So this is a brilliant one because I remember the news story coming out last year. So did you ever hear about the Bored Ape restaurant that opened in Los Angeles?
Well, I didn't until I recently found this article, which I sent to our producer to include in the Weird World of Crypto. So I didn't know about it when it opened. I just know about it now.
I have friends out in LA that were really keen to go. And I think somebody sent me a picture of it from the outside, and it's actually painted with like Bored Apes and different sort of well-recognizable NFT art. So the whole thing is themed around crypto, and they accepted crypto as payment. So originally the restaurant embraced all the aesthetics of the crypto age, including walls adorned with memes and tableware bearing Bored Ape NFT art, with the menu showcasing the restaurant's food items alongside its price in both US dollars and cryptocurrency.
Yes. Now, I originally found this story in everybody's favorite newspaper, the Daily Star.
Right. Okay.
I don't know how it came. I don't know how it came up on my feed. What's really funny is that Andy, the owner, said he paid more than $330,000, which is about £270,000, for for his NFT, which formed the basis of his restaurant's brand. However, some people that visited the restaurant didn't even care about the NFT aspect and actually went purely because the burgers were very good.
Yeah, okay. It sounds like he's backpedaling a little bit. But yeah, I think as the article said, fast forward a few months and you'll no longer find references to cryptocurrency on the joint's menu. In fact, all the prices given for items are shown in US dollars only. And whilst the journalist who wrote this couldn't get hold of the owner for a comment on the sudden change, an anonymous employee did share that they didn't know when or if the store would begin accepting crypto again. It's just simply not offered as a choice for now, which is just seems quite sad, really. I mean, to set up a restaurant clearly right at the top of the market, right? You know, during the period of the major NFT hype and Bored Apes were everywhere, and he's like, shit, I know. I'm going to set up a Bored Ape restaurant. It'll be the talk of the town. And evidently that's just not been the case. But I do wonder why he's not accepting crypto still, because
it's just weird, isn't it? I mean, you can surely just have a merchant system where you take payment, and you could pretty much convert that straight to a stable coin or probably cash out. Like, what are you actually doing? What was the whole point of setting this up in the first place if you're not going to continue doing that? But I was reading the Daily Star article, like you do, and there are a lot of really good reviews for the burgers, especially the vegan burger. So people are still going there because the food's great.
Well, that's something, I suppose. I think this is an example of more money than sense, right? He's probably made a fair bit of money through the crypto markets, decided to open an NFT restaurant, and has since decided to stop accepting crypto payments. But you're right. I mean, with something like Strike or the Lightning Network, you can continue to take Bitcoin payments super fast, very, very cheap, and convert straight back to your local fiat currency, or just, or hold it as Bitcoin. So I don't know. I'd be encouraging merchants to be doing that now anyway, regardless of whether you've got NFTs all over the wall.
Very, very bizarre and very weird, which, of course, is why it was in the Weird World of Crypto segment this week.
Totally. Yeah, Andy, if you're listening, please join us on the show and explain your poor decisions.
Yes, because he needs to explain himself to the crypto world.
Yeah, he does. Absolutely. So I think that's all we've got for this week.
It sure
it's been, it's been very sort of regulation focused, which is really the sort of main focus at the moment. I think as we kind of go into this bear market and we've got a 40% drawdown from June, I think all eyes are on regulators now, because the next cycle is fundamentally going to be driven by this framework. And I think the better that we can understand this, the better positioned we'll be for, let's say, the 2024 bull run. So we will be talking about regulation a lot.
Absolutely. And it's really why we originally started this podcast, was to empower people to make their own informed decisions. But certainly to empower us to make our own informed decisions and then be able to share that with our listeners. So thank you so much for joining us today. And make sure you're subscribed if you're not already on wherever you're listening. And we've got some brilliant guest interviews coming up over the next few weeks. So we look forward to sharing those.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could leave a review wherever you're listening. This really does help and allows other people to find us online. You can keep up to date with new releases of the podcast by subscribing and following us on Twitter or Instagram for the latest crypto-related news. Information provided by Crypto Pulse via this podcast, website, social media channels, and any other medium does not constitute financial advice, investment recommendations, or any other type of advice whatsoever. The Crypto Pulse team are not professional financial advisors. Trading and purchasing cryptocurrencies do carry risks, and anybody wishing to partake in such activities should seek professional advice.